give a review and my opinion. So this is what this video is about. Now this machine that I built a couple of years ago now has been performing extremely well, and that's using the awc708s controller. Now I've been extremely happy with that, so interesting to see how this new touchscreen controller performs on this machine. Now I use this machine every day and it hasn't missed a beat, so I'm hoping that the new controller will perform just as well. Now the 708S controller has been discontinued, so this new touchscreen model, the 7813, is its direct replacement. And the software that you can use with Trocen controllers is Trocen's LaserCAD, which is a free software. But the software I prefer to use is a paid version, which is Lightburn. So the parcel arrived from Trocen, and we'll have a look and see what we get inside it. So we get the touchscreen, get the mainboard controller. Now one thing I do note about the mainboard controller as soon as I opened up is that it's black, and also the text on it labelling all the outlets are also black, and it's quite hard to read unless you hold it up into the correct light. So definitely need to refer to the manual so that I can actually identify those outputs. Also in the package came some mounting screws, USB cable, a USB header, the HMI interface cable, a Ethernet header, an Ethernet cable, and that is all. So there's no manual included in the box, but I've been able to download one from Trocen, so I'll have a look at that and get it installed. So as I just mentioned, the controller is actually quite hard to read all the outlet labels. And that's because they've just used embossed or raised text, black on black. It's a lot different compared to their previous controller, which was a lot easier to read, silver with the black text. So what I'm going to do is refer to the manual and put all the labels that I've created. I've created some labels using my label maker, and I'm going to label this up just so it's easy to read when I'm doing the install. So I've got the labels here on this controller, and the only wiring differences that I see between the 708S and this controller is that the X and Y limit switches are on a plug here, whereas the Z limit switch is on a separate plug next to it. However, on the 708S controller we have X, Y and Z all on the one connection. That's the only wiring difference that I see, so we'll just have to rewire our limit switches, but everything else should be just plug and play straight into the corresponding sockets. So this is the 7813 controller. Now this controller, 78 series, one meaning a single laser tube with 3 axes. They also do a 7824, which is a dual laser tube with 4 axes. And they do a 7846, which is 4 laser tubes and 6 axes. So this is the baby of this series, but it's got all the controls that I need to be able to operate my machine. So in this video I'm going to concentrate mainly on the installation and configuration of the controller changeover. Now if you're installing this new into a machine, then you don't need to worry about your existing settings because it's a brand new machine and you don't have a controller that you're swapping from. However, I've got all my calibrated X and Y settings in here, the limit switch, the direction polarity and all those sort of settings good for this machine, so I'm going to take note of those before I remove the controller and install the new one. So let's have a look at this controller a little bit closer. Now the physical size of the controller, as you can see, it's quite a bit smaller than the 708S. However, the cutout or the section, the recess into our machine is the same size. It just has a smaller footprint on the top of the machine. Now on the front here we have our USB port, which is just a rubber dust cover to keep the dust out of our USB disk port. On the front of the controller, on the front edge, we have the HMI interface, and that goes off to our main board. We also have our Ethernet port as well as our USB for the PC connection. So the user manual available from Trocen, and I'm also going to make this user manual available on my website. Now it's a very comprehensive document, about 112 pages. It goes into all the configuration settings that you need, has all the features here all listed, as well as your wiring diagrams, what's included in the box, the dimensions that you need to cut out to fit it onto your laser machine, the size of the board, and again, as I mentioned, we have the wiring. So always refer to your user manual if you're unsure, and especially seeing as though that these labels are not easily read. it's a very good idea to refer to this documentation. So while I was installing this, I noticed that output 4 is not used and output 6 is used for our layer blowing, so that connects through to our pneumatic solenoid. So it's all wired up and we've got our HMI interface here on the left hand side, and then we've got our Ethernet header as well as our USB header. Now these cables have got some nice right angles on it which make it easy to install. Now this is the moment of truth. We're going to power it on and see how we fare. Okay, so the laser head's actually moving to the left and to the bottom, and that's not the direction that my homing position is in. So I can press stop, and now I need to configure the controller with the settings that I need. And then later on in the documentation it also goes through the touchscreen menu and what you'll find where. It doesn't mention in there the user password, however the user password for the 7813 is 7813, so that should be easy enough for you to remember. So this is what the display looks like, and I haven't used this controller before, so let's see how easy it is to operate. So we have the Y and X axis movements here. Pulse the laser, start the job, origin and frame. We also have parameters, and this looks like another menu system, so we'll press that. Oh yeah, and down the bottom here we have menu. So we'll go into menu. So now we'll have a look at the manufacturer parameter settings, and the password I hope is just 7813, which it is. The axis parameter settings is what we'll look at first. Now the X-axis, I have the settings that I saved from my previous controller, so we'll have a look at those and I'll enter them in. So that looked pretty easy to set up, and what I'm going to do now is press the reset and see how it functions. So that reset now into the right position, and what I'm going to do now is send a file to the controller and see how it performs. Now I've got it moving in the right directions. I'm just going to see Z moves up and down, up, down. It's working well. And we can go from fast speed, middle button, to slow movement speed, which is good. So we move around freely. Okay. What I like about this controller, the Trosen controllers, is that it gives a beep when the file's been received from Lightburn. So I send the file directly to the controller, it comes up on the screen and gives me a beep, so I know that it's set correctly. So what I'll do now is put in a piece of timber, and we're just going to do a piece of scrap engraving here. Test it out. Position the laser. Origin. Box. That's good. So there we have our piece, our test piece from the first cut on our laser. Very happy with the result. Obviously the laser was already calibrated, and I've just entered the calibration settings from my previous controller, so the result is what I'm used to. So far I'm happy with the controller, but I'm going to use it over the next few days and hopefully give you a review, things I like and things I don't like about it. Some of the diagnostic features that are built in are under the More option, and we have our inputs, so we can see here we have values all on one, which we can then test. For example, our X limit switches. If we activate the X limit switch, we can see that it's functioning by changing from a 1 to a 0. The same with our Y limit switch. If I activate it, changes from a 1 to a 0. So we can do our diagnostics using this screen. And our outputs we can also test. So output 1 is my exhaust fan, which is part of the air assist. So when it's tested, we press that, the exhaust fan comes on, as we can hear that there. Now also part of the air assist is the pneumatic solenoid, which controls the air on and air off for the different cut layers, and that's connected through to output 6. So if we test that output 6, we can hear that the air comes on and the pneumatic solenoid is activated. So just those little features there. We also have options to reset the X and Y, also reset the Z, and then we have the move buttons where we have the arrows for moving our X and Y axis as well as our Z axis. The speedo in the middle is switching between slow and fast movements. This is handy because on the home screen we just have access to the X and Y axis movements, and if we want the Z axis we need to press the menu across button and we can access the Z up and Z down buttons. Now back on the main screen we have laser pulse. We have start the job. We can set our origin and do a frame or a box around our frame. But we have these options under here, which we have other. We can do our autofocus if we have the autofocus enabled, and we can move our X and Y to the origin. Like I said, the touchscreen is very nice and clear and bright, easy to